Hello, beauties. Today I'm going to help you understand your cranial top and how it affects your hairstyle choices. What has been the hidden culprit behind disappointing haircuts will be revealed today. As a hairstylist of 18 years, I'll help you determine your cranial top type and your facial structure that will allow you to understand why some styles just don't work for you and how to pick ones that do. Let's go. So your cranial top is the space between your hairline and the very top of your head, your crown. This is known as your cranial top, and it can either be high or low. So to determine whether yours is high or low, you need to first determine what the length of your facial third is, which is the distance between the middle of your brow and your hairline. So this is known as your top third. The face is broken into a full 3/3, but to determine the cranial top, we're looking just at the top third. So if the length of your cranial top is longer or the same length as your top third, again, from your eyebrow up to your hairline, it is considered high. If the length is shorter than the distance of your top third, your cranial top is low. Most people have no clue that this is even a thing, but once you get the concept, it is like turning the lights on in a room that you have been stumbling through as it pertains to your hair. I have talked about this topic before in a past video, and I'm excited to expand on it more. If though you find yourself with any questions, do not hesitate to ask in the comments below. I will answer them for you. You can also check out the other video after this one, as this topic can feel a little confusing. I do want you to remember though, there is no such thing as a better cranial top. This video is not meant for you to compare yourself to others. It is about understanding your own features and how to wear hairstyles that complement you best. So before we get into the ways you can adjust or style your hair based off of this cranial top, we need to first understand what the main differences or pros of each cranial top are. This is a question you may find yourself asking or wondering. So if your cranial top is high, you naturally have the appearance of more volume in your hair due to the natural height that your cranial top creates. Jennifer Aniston has a high cranial top, and she always looks like she has the perfect amount of volume in her hair, which is due to the cranial top being high. High cranial tops, you're probably less likely to feel the need to tease your hair compared to low cranial tops. So high cranial tops can also help to visually elongate the face, and this works out well a lot of times for shorter face shapes. So if we take a look here at Kendall Jenner, her actual facial length is not super long. In fact, her cranial top is actually almost half of her entire facial length as a whole. So there is a lot of length that the eye sees when it goes from her crown down all the way through her jawline. There's a lot of elongation here that makes her face look longer than it actually is. So I'm gonna pin up a good comparison photo for you guys. So if she were to have a low cranial top here, where I have photoshopped off the top of her head, but if she were to have a low cranial top, you can see now how her face appears a bit more wide than it does when she has the high cranial top. And these are the same exact size photos, just with this cut off. But with her cranial top lower, it does allow for you to notice, oh, her face actually isn't really all that long because the extra length from the cranial top is gone. This, however, it's not a bad thing if you have a low cranial top. Your eyes and your cheekbones often get to take the spotlight a little bit more maybe than they do with a high cranial top. And I think in this experience, it really, or example I should say, it really draws you into her eyes a bit more. And if she were smiling, I think that her cheeks would even pop a bit more. So there are pros to cranial tops, whether they are high or low. Now, I do think it's fair to mention that you can have a cranial top that appears to be more in the middle. So that means that it's not necessarily going to be longer than the height of your forehead, but it's also not going to be shorter than the height of your forehead. So those of you who fall into this category, which I think is very common, you actually have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to styles because you have more balance between the two shapes, so to speak. But I don't want you to just go skipping out just yet because there are still lots of things to keep in consideration when it comes to hairstyles that work best, all which we will be discussing in this video. So how high or low your cranial top may appear to the eye can be altered by where you decide to part your hair. However, your cranial top alone should not choose where you part your hair, as you will also want to consider your facial length as well as your facial features when deciding on which part works best for you. So if your cranial top is low, a middle part can work well for those of you who have longer face shapes such as oval, heart, diamond, oblong, or rectangular. When your cranial top is low and you wear a middle part, it sort of creates the illusion of this horizontal line that runs across the top of your head, helping to balance out your facial length. So Kerry Washington, as you can see here, is a perfect example of someone who pulls this off beautifully. If you take a look at this picture of her, you can see how her facial length, it complements this horizontal line that we see through the top of her head from her cranial top, and it sort of helps to balance out the length of her face instead of stretching it further, where if she had a higher cranial top that extended up even more, it might make her facial length look a bit abnormally long, where it's already naturally has a beautiful length to it. And in her case, the low cranial top really complements this well. Middle parts though are also great for if you do have a low cranial top and you wanna showcase your eyes and your cheekbones, as you can see in our examples here. Mila Kunis obviously has a bit of a high cranial top compared to Natalie Portman, but you can see that in both cases, the middle part does draw the focus into the center of their face. And again, Natalie Portman, she has more facial length, like Kerry Washington, where Mila Kunis has a little less length, but her cranial top is high. So they can still work middle parts for both cranial tops. It all comes down to personal preference. Now, if you've got a wider hairline, and I'm gonna pin some photos up here on the board of examples for you guys. If you have a wider hairline, you might want to opt for a middle part, regardless if your cranial top is high or low, to try to minimize the width of your forehead. So in this case, a wide forehead, it means that you have a very straight hairline, that your top third here, your forehead, again, the forehead is hairline to middle of the brow, your top third. This is very wide. So in this case, if you want to minimize it, you might prefer a side part over the middle. And again, this is regardless of your cranial top, because what this does is it creates the more narrow point here to slightly come in more on your forehead. So where you have this broadness here, the middle part does cut that out a little bit. So it sort of helps to balance this feature. Again, this is all personal preference, but let's say your forehead, you did not like how much width you naturally had, you would always probably prefer the middle part. In shorter facial length, sometimes middle parts can help to make it appear a little bit more narrow because that hair is falling along the sides of your face, which will lead to a more oval appearance, which should also oftentimes make the face appear a little bit more longer than it does short. Now, a middle part might not suit you best if you have a small forehead, or you maybe want to draw attention away from, let's say, your nose. So my forehead is quite short in length. Some of you did not hesitate to let me know this in my last cranial top video. But in my case, opting for a middle part sort of accentuates this feature about myself. And in our example of Deborah Messing, a middle part brings in all the attention to the center of her face, sort of honing in on her nose, which is already a prominent feature. So in our cases, when we opt for side parts, the side part automatically opens up our faces quite a bit more compared to the middle part. So it gives more movement to one's eye rather than just focusing in on, let's say, an area we're not maybe wanting to enhance. So in my case, it really opens up. It's parted on the wider side, or I should say taller side of my top third. It allows you to see all of my face. It gives me a little bit more of my heart-shaped face that I have. And again, on Deborah Messing, it just opens this up so you see all of her face. You get to see a little bit more of her jawline, and it just draws attention away from her nose. Now, again, this comes down to personal preference, but if you were somebody who can relate to our two situations, you probably are going to prefer the side parts over the middle part. So side parts also, they create angles and they add shape to your face a little bit more as a whole than compared to a middle part. You're able to really get in there and see the angles of the face a tiny bit more. For low cranial tops, they also add the illusion of more height because again, the eye is being drawn up and over rather than the middle. It just tends to lay a little bit more flat. And then depending on how high your cranial top is though, you may want to skip a side part as it can add the appearance of even more height. So when we look at this example of Kendall Jenner, who again, she has a very high cranial top. Maybe I'll pop up a picture of here because I can't find it laying out, but she has a very high cranial top. So when she chooses to do the side part, what ends up happening is her hair and head shape sort of take over as far as the balance between her face shape and her hair and head shape. There's not as much balance between these two. Granted, her hair is teased quite a bit, but look at how much height this has with her side part. And it makes her head look a little abnormally large more than it is. So in the case of a high cranial top, you might prefer to skip a side part, or you just want to be very precise in how you style your hair. You might want to go for a more smooth look with less volume on top because you already naturally have so much volume on your own that the side part may be more of a concern for you. It's all personal preference, but just something to watch out for. An issue in both cranial tops can be volume in the hair. And this is where you're gonna really start to understand why it is also that you may prefer a middle or side part. So we're gonna have lots of fun with this. But those of you with a high cranial top, you may prefer styles that distract from the natural height that your head shape brings. And those with low cranial tops, you may wish to avoid styles that enhance this flat appearance through your head shape. So anytime the hair is worn more sleek and smooth, regardless of your hair's length or your face shape, it's always going to draw attention to your head shape because of this smooth surface. So let's say that you are a low cranial top gal and you're somebody who likes volume, and I don't mean that you have to have like loads and loads of volume, but you do like some volume in your hair so it's not just hanging flat. You probably hate a middle part. And why that is because this only accentuates your low cranial top and the flat horizontal appearance it creates. So this imaginary horizontal line that your low cranial top creates, it puts this on display. Where with a high cranial top, you just naturally have this added height that it gives the appearance of volume, even though the style is smooth and sleek. You just naturally have the height here. So in low cranial tops, a way to offset this is simply just going with a side part. So I wanted to use this example here because JLo's hair is actually still quite smooth and sleek, but because she has the side part, it just lightly, it draws the eye up. It creates just the slightest amount of volume. We're not necessarily, it doesn't mean it has to be like this big extreme difference. It creates just the ever so slight amount of volume. It draws that eye up a little bit more, and it gives a little bit more fullness, and it takes away from that flat horizontal line where you don't notice it as much as you do when the hair is worn down the middle and in a very straight style. So we've got bend here through the ends, but it's still really smooth and sleek. But that side part, it just brings the eye up just a little bit, okay? We're talking baby steps. It doesn't have to be extremes. So let's also not forget though about those of you with high cranial tops that you want to figure out what styles help you minimize the height you naturally have in your head shape, and those of you with low cranial tops that may still prefer a middle part, but you also want to help minimize that flat appearance in your shape with your middle part. So ways you can offset with styling your hair to draw attention away from your cranial top if you want to wear a middle part is that you can choose to wear styles with more texture in your hair. So this can be in the form of soft waves, as you can see here, or more so like volume blowouts that you get like a salon style look. Anytime you create texture in the hair, so texture in this case means movement. The hair is not just stick straight. You're naturally taking away visual focus from just one set single area because there is more going on within the actual hairstyle. Because even just the slightest amount of movement or bend in the hair creates texture. So if I even just pop back up this photo here of JLo, this is what I mean with the texture. You have straight hair. It is smooth. There is, I mean, not to say there's nothing to it because like it looks nice, it does. But as far as the cranial top, there's nothing going on. So the eye just kind of comes up, sees this, it's all flat and straight. Versus when there's more texture in the hair and movement, the eye just naturally moves around. So you're wanting to make sure you create balance when you're wanting to distract from a set area. Now, if you want to create even more movement and volume to distract, you can go ahead and opt to curl the hair. And this can be done whether, again, your cranial top is high or low. So let me get these photos on the board for you guys. So curling the hair in full voluminous curls is a great way to balance your cranial top. And of course you can still opt to do it with the side part, but the middle part, it really does balance and add more movement to the eye, depending on what you're comfortable with. But curls instantly add volume all through the hair, so the eye is being brought out and down due to the curls. So in higher to middle cranial tops, because the eye is brought out more horizontally, it helps deter the eye from going to just the very top of your head because these curls come out a little bit more wider. Now, one may argue that this enhances the horizontal line and low cranial tops, but because we have so much movement through the hair, it still overall balances. And again, it's important to remember balance is essentially the goal when it comes to styling ourselves. So what movement is it that you want to bring to the eye when opting for your hairstyles? And usually most of us don't want to draw attention to just one set single area. So curls or texture always help to minimize, and they are just all around a great option for any face shape, feature, or cranial top. Let's now go over styling tips to help get you these looks in your own hair, and I'm gonna show you how you can get 2 looks from just 1 shampoo and a very easy blow dry process. So for voluminous texture or curly styles, you will always want to use a volumizing mousse throughout your hair. This adds thickness, fullness, and it helps hold your style. So my longtime favorite is Moroccan Oil's Volume Mousse. This is known for having great lightweight hold, and for a budget option, Garnier Fructis, their Sky High Volume, is another excellent option. So you're gonna apply your mousse from roots to end, which is about 3 balls, to make sure you are getting even coverage all through your hair. And if needed, you wanna follow up with an anti-frizz product like Amika The Shield or Frieda Frizzies to give you that frizz control. Next is blow dry time. You are going to just simply rough dry your hair till it is 100% dry. I do suggest using a vented paddle brush to pair with this to use throughout this process, because it will give you a little more control in your hair. You can use it to brush your roots up to create a little bit more volume, and it will also help to tame out any frizz that you may have, but it's still a very easy process, and it just gives you a little bit more control during this step. Now that your hair is dry, you are going to start creating that salon style blow dry, but in a much easier way than working your arms endlessly. And you are going to shape your hair into the perfect style by using a heated round brush. So what you're gonna do is section your hair off as if you're going to blow dry it, and first spray on a heat protectant. Amika The Shield works great for this. It's also a heat protectant as well as anti-frizz. And then you're simply just gonna glide your heated round brush through your hair about 2 to 3 times. The heated round brush will smooth out any texture or frizz that has maybe formed in your hair, and it's going to start putting that round, voluminous shape into your hair. So you're gonna roll all of your hair into the brush to get a nice rounded shape. Hold it in place for a few seconds to evenly heat the hair, and then to remove, you're just gonna twist it out from the hair to create that nice salon style bend in your ends. And you're just gonna repeat this process through all of your hair, going section to section. And your final look will vary depending on how your hair's texture is or how many layers you do or you don't have. I love a heated round brush. It is a great option for creating this look in your hair, but with less stress. And the one I'm using is from the brand Sutra. It's their infrared thermal styling brush, and I will link it below in the description along with the discount code if you are curious to check it out. So once you're done going through your hair, simply just fluff it into place. You can opt to use a bit of a texture spray if you want to create a little bit more volume. You can also use a hairspray if you want to give it some extra hold, but you have got a nice full salon style blow dry that gives you your first of these 2 styles. So now let's address look 2. So because you washed and styled your hair for look 1, creating look 2, which is our curls, is going to be a breeze. So you'll section off your hair the same as you did for look 1. You're gonna spray that heat protectant onto your hair, and then you're gonna run the hair through your iron. So for longer lasting curls, you wanna ensure that your sections are no bigger than your iron, because if the section is too big, the hair is not going to heat up evenly. So you're gonna hold the iron in your hair for about 10 to 12 seconds before removing, and you do not wanna touch the curls once you let your hair out of the iron. We're gonna allow them to cool down to give us lasting longing hold, and you're just gonna repeat this process until all of your hair is curled. And then after you have curled your hair and it has cooled down, you're just gonna smooth the hair with a wide tooth comb to allow your curls to fall into place. You could also use a lightweight oil at this point if you feel you need to add some shine back in your hair or smooth down any flyaways. And then you can set with a hairspray to lock everything into place, and you have created full curls that balance your cranial top, whether high or low, to give you lots of movement to the eye. So there you go, ladies. You now have a better understanding of your cranial top, your facial structure, and hairstyles that help to bring out the best in your features. And be sure to let me know in the comments if you have a high or low cranial top. And if you're curious to hear even more on this topic and facial proportions, you can check out this video right here. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.